All right, welcome to another episode of the Illustrious Gentleman. My co-host tonight is Cory from Cab Comics in Flagstaff, Arizona. Welcome, Cory.
Hi.
Hi. Scott is still on a deadline crunch, so he's taken the week to try to catch up on his pages.
Is it for issue 2?
No, it's only the Future State House of L book is a 48-page one shot.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, 48 pages.
I saw the cover he posted.
Yeah,
right?
that's a Yannick. Yannick.
That's
Paquette.
Yannick?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
Scott didn't do the covers yet, sadly. Not that we're not fans of Mr. Paquette.
Yeah.
So for the show, if you want to support the show, you can go to tigshow.com, and from there you can link to our Patreon, and you can also go to our merch page and pick up some shirts, coasters, cool shit like that. Today, Cory and I are going to be doing like a 2020 comic book roundup show, and then kind of what we're looking forward to in 2021. Cory's been on the show before, but I should mention, I did mention Cab Comics, Flagstaff, Arizona, the only comic book shop in Flagstaff, Arizona, and the best comic book shop in Flagstaff, Arizona by far.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Okay. Are you having a beer tonight or not?
No, well, I'm having whiskey.
Okay.
I got some Johnny Walker Black Label.
Okay.
Yeah, for Christmas. So I didn't want any beer tonight before bed. So I went for just hard liquor to help me fall asleep.
Yeah. Why get the bloat of the beer like me on these beautiful 4 American lagers that I have to drink tonight, which is actually a joy because normally I have to buy these certain beers in the bomber. So I end up drinking essentially 2 beers of each thing. So tonight's a treat. I'm down to I got 4 bottles.
Nice.
Very special. So it is the 4th week, and I guess the last week in the first round of the Triple B Beer Challenge. If anyone is new to the show and hasn't been paying attention the last couple of weeks, I took 16 American domestic cheap lagers and doing a blind taste test. None of them are great, but I'm trying to find out which one I actually like best. So tonight we're going to be doing the middle of the bracket, seeds 7 through 10, and they're ranked based off of sales data from a USA Today article from 2019. So I have Busch proper, not Busch Light, just Busch. 4.3% scores a 50 on Beer Advocate. Shocking. I was shocked at how much Busch sells. I guess I just don't know. That's the number 7 ranked selling beer in 2019. Miller High Life, the 8th ranked beer, 4.6%, scores a 64 on Beer Advocate. I mentioned a few weeks ago when I started this stupid challenge that I used to drink a shitload of Miller High Life because you used to be able to get a 12-pack for like $4.99.
Yeah.
Number 9 is PBR, 4.74%, scores a 68 on Beer Advocate. Pretty high. I'm shocked at that. And then number 10 is Dos Equis, 4.2%. Dos Equis Lager, I should say, scores a 64 on Beer Advocate.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna do 2 of these beers, move on to the Elite 8.
But I thought Dos Equis is not an import. I'm kind of novice to beer stuff.
No, I think it is considered an import, but I put 3 Mexican beers on here just because they're so common.
For us being in Arizona, they're so close.
Yeah, and those are the ones that are probably the most expensive. Like Dos Equis and Pacifico are probably the 2 most expensive beers on my list of 16. But I needed to fill out a list of 16 beers. So
I remember in college I went to ASU and graduated from there, and we did a lot of flip cup, and PBR was like, you didn't use PBR for that because it was too good for flip cup, but you would do what is it? There's like Natty Ice and Milwaukee's Best, but like you knew when you hit Natty Ice because you're like, oh, this is not great. This is not good beer, but you can still drink it. Right. But it was like It was kind of one of those things where you knew when you hit because you just keep filling the pictures, and then when you got to that picture and you're in the game, you're like, oh, okay, gotta flip the cup. Okay, threw me off.
Okay, so I only went to an associate's. I only got an associate's degree. I went to an art school for college, and I was like, I had 2 kids, and I was in my mid-20s, so I never played college drinking games. Is flip cup just when you flip the cup, and if it lands, everyone else drinks?
Right.
Okay.
No. So
Oh.
you have your team.
Mhm.
Right? Always Sunny in Philadelphia does a good job of doing Flipadelia.
Okay.
Philadelphia. Yeah. And so you have your starting. What you got to do is also, in Flip Cup, you need to have a solid anchor.
Okay.
You have a good finisher.
Like a ringer.
Well, no, not so much. Well, you can have a ringer. It doesn't matter. But you need to have someone under pressure. Like you have your starting and your ender, your beginner and your end. Mm-hmm. So you have, your person in the front that you cheers, you drink it, put the cup down, and then flip it, and then turn the lid up. So it flips with this lid up. So it's upside down. So it's empty. And that also, like, the next person goes. So you cheers, drink, flip, it lands with the butt in the air, and then the next person goes. And they keep going all the way down to the end.
Okay.
Heated games in college.
I was going to say, did it ever turn physical? Did you ever, get angry?
No, but there was a lot of, like if somebody was, if you could tell in Flip Cup, though, if there's beer on the table from somebody drinking, if there's a lot of beer, like you didn't finish your beer, so you're disqualified because there's too much liquid on there. Right. I competed in some Olympic games, in beer drinking Olympic games. Sure. In the past, I don't want to get into that too much.
Right. I mean, that's what you go to ASU for.
I competed. I didn't place. Right. But yeah.
Right. You made the team.
Well, yeah.
Right. Were you in a frat, or did you just drink a lot?
No, we just drank a lot.
Cool.
So where I was.
So what was your beer of choice in college? Like, if you weren't playing drinking games, if you were just going to pick up a 12-pack on a Saturday, what would you usually get?
I think Rolling Rock. Because that was it was one of those that was easy, but also I could have a couple, but not have too many. But also if I was getting Del Taco or getting some hamburgers, a Rolling Rock was.
Yeah, and it's still cheap. Rolling Rock's still cheap. I've drank a fair share of La Trobe's Best. But yeah, it doesn't. When you have one now as an adult after drinking mostly craft beer, most of these beers have been pretty good. Out of the 16 that I've tasted, maybe there were 2 that I instantly didn't like, immediately didn't like, because they're all so kind of easy drinking. But Rolling Rock has a skunkiness to it that I don't appreciate in my older age. So anyways, at the end of the show, or whenever I finish these 4 samplers, we'll reveal which 2 move on. All right. So we don't talk enough about comics on the show because Scott doesn't read comics, and I have because I buy all my comics from you. I have a month where I might get 6 comics, and I'll have a month where I might only get 2 comics. So I don't, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think I read a lot of comics, even though I read more comics now than I have in a long time. But you're the pro. I needed someone to come in, help me carry the episode, and I thought it'd be a good topic. So let's start with, personally, what were some of your favorite comics of 2020? Not sales wise, but just kind of what you dug.
Damn, I wasn't ready for that one. So for me, I guess I was really huge into the boys when they came out in issue form, and those were ones when I first opened that I was reading before we opened, and I was reading after we opened the store, and they came back to do kind of a little epilogue, a little extra story. Right. And that for me was kind of nice to revisit some of those characters, even though it was kind of like a prequel, but also it was 2 stories in one issue, the past with Butcher and then the current with Huey. Okay. And Starlight. So it was kind of seeing you had that little you'd have a good chunk of stuff in the past about Butcher, and he had a diary he wrote that Huey got, and so you got to see a lot of that, and then a little bit of Huey's life, and then kind of eventually that kind of like they kind of switched places to where it was more Huey and a little bit of Butcher. Or not, I mean, but it kind of wrapped it up.
Right.
And so that was kind of, for me, seeing that again and reading that, it kind of like brought back some excitement for me.
Yeah, we've talked on the show about how much we like the TV show, The Boys, but I never really read the comics. I probably should at some point, and I had a great night drinking with Derek Robertson in a hotel bar a couple of years ago. But all I wanted to talk about was like his new Warriors work and like designing Rage for new Warriors. That's all I could talk about.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would like the Boys comics. I just never. It's one of those things like there's too much now. Like
yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's. I think there's 5 complete volumes or 6 complete volumes now, so there's some good content. But I was one of those kind of. I used to have the trades in, and it was kind of always a constant like spoke to me in a way because it was like a real superhero, and I read those, and it was kind of a one where people like I don't like superheroes. I'm like, well, here's a superhero book that people don't like superheroes. Like
right.
So it's enjoyable, and it was, but yeah, it was cool to have that one back, and like, I don't know if that's like coming back to the well of like a sequel or like, original wise, comic book story wise.
Right.
That was one that was something that I spoke out to me in issue form.
Okay.
Trying to think of like, it's weird how like last year with everything with COVID and then like the shutdown and then like kind of revitalizing it and kind of things coming back. I guess because I'm just pulling from like the last couple months,
right.
The most recent Rorschach comic was like pretty awesome because it was just like, all right, I'm in. It was, I think, issue 4, and I was like, all right, this is going somewhere.
Right.
Let's see what happens. And so that kind of sealed the deal for me because I was on the fence about that. From Rorschach from DC Comics, like the Watchmen.
Yeah.
Kind of not. It's a like I don't know. You can't really put a place on like it's a sequel, but it's not. But it's also like we don't know.
Right. That's Tom King and Jorge Farinas or something like that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm terrible at names, especially on books that I don't read.
that one what for me was like, okay, that the most recent issue was like, okay, that's cool. Let's see where this goes.
Okay. What I was like to say, do you read almost everything that comes in? So you can stay knowledgeable on it, or is there some stuff you just don't feel you don't ever read because you just don't feel like it? I'm not asking you to throw books under the bus, just as a general rule.
I'm not a Star Wars guy,
and
so like that's kind of like my underlying, like I don't really have expertise in Star Wars, so I don't know about that kind of stuff. But usually, like I can sell the trade paperbacks better than I can the single issues.
Right.
Because I'm like, hey, Star Wars Bounty Hunters, Volume 1, what's going on? And they're like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, Darth Vader, he's got a lightsaber. And they're like, oh, it's so cool. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
you just perfectly encapsulated Star Wars fans. They're just like, oh, that's cool. I'll buy it because it's cool.
Well, most times, like the single issues, like people come in and they know the brand, they know what they're going to get. So it's like, I don't know. I don't need to try and sell it too much. So it's one I don't read that every week. And there's like almost every week there's a new Star Wars book or Star Wars title. It's kind of like, in some regards, it's like it's nice to have a break because every Wednesday or every Tuesday, here's all the new books, and then like, here's all the stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I want to read that, and then like I'll be too tired to read it at night after a long day,
right?
And it's kind of the joy is reading comic books before I go to bed. But if it's like one that doesn't hold my interest, I don't feel good about reading comic books at work at the store. It doesn't feel the same,
right?
So, but there's a few like Marvel titles and DC titles. I don't read Harley Quinn but I can, help people, tell people about stuff. With some the most recent King in Black, there's a bunch of different tie-ins that I'm not reading. And
Right.
I'll ask my customers and talk to them a little bit and kind of get a finger on the pulse of what's happening there. This summer when Empire was happening, I was reading it and it just did not hold my interest.
Right.
And I would talk to my customers and like, what happened last issue? And they're like, oh, this thing, like that, seeing the disappointment on their face, but like, I'm hoping to turn it around the next issue, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Do you find with customers, are most of them kind of as fickle as me? Like I'll give a book 1 issue or 2 issues. I'll never sit through a whole arc if it doesn't grab me immediately. But you seem to have like maybe some customers who pick up runs no matter what, like they always pick up certain books.
Like, I guess for example, like you'd always watch a Coyotes game,
right?
So like I have guys that will always watch a Green Lantern comic. We'll always read a Green Lantern comic, no matter what, no matter who's on it, what's happening. That's their team, that's their group.
Yeah, that's a good way to equate that, because my first thought is why would you read something? Why would you be so obsessed with a character that you would read everything about that character? But yeah, I'll watch, if my hockey team was on a 10-game losing streak, I'm still going to watch the 11th game. So I guess it makes sense. There's a little bit of suffering in there.
Yeah. And there are people who are like, there's that childhood, like feeling of like, okay, I want to read Iron Man. Iron Man was my guy as a kid and I want to see where it goes.
Right.
And same with like, there's a lot of Batman fans. And with Batman, it's also like they want to get all things Batman. They don't want to miss a beat. They want to make sure they get every single part of it. And, all things Batman, all things Detective Comics, and kind of go from there and make sure they have, no issue missing in that run.
Right.
There's people who are like, who have a more like fickle, or like they have more of a different taste, and some of them have turned off on Marvel and DC and kind of gone over to Boom or Image or now Vault or Aftershock and kind of like experimented with like, I want to try these comics out and see where they go and see what happens there.
Yeah. Have you seen this is more of a sales question. I'll go back to that. So for me, I got a couple things I wrote down here as far as books I liked. Not a lot. I mean, not a lot of stuff like just jumped out to me, but the 10 of Swords, the issues that Pepe Larraz and RB Silva did, were always great. Like I never felt like, I mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I never felt like I needed to read all the other issues.
No,
it's all pretty self-explanatory, but I'm also not reading it for the story. But yeah, I think in the last issue of the 10 of Swords that Pepe Larraz drew, like part 22 of 22 or whatever that was, there's a great like splash page that had like just almost every mutant you could think of coming through like a teleportation portal.
Right.
That was just great. Like it just reminded me of like when I was a kid, like reading comics, like this is the shit I want, like this kind of bombastic fun stuff.
On the same point, like X of Swords to me reminded me of like when I read like Executioner Song as a kid. I didn't get all the parts. I couldn't get all the pieces, but I got like some of them.
Right.
It was like, oh man, what happened? Like here's a little recap of what happened in like 3 other issues or whatever. With like this is what happened with New Mutants or X-Force and that kind of stuff. Like, oh man, so cool. And then that kind of stuff. Same with like Phalanx Agenda or whatever. You don't get all the pieces, but you have like, okay, here's this part, but also like here's a little, here's a little nugget of all the other information from the other series. And that's what got me, was like they're doing some good storytelling in every single issue to tell what's going on, but also like if you don't get that issue, not a big deal.
Yeah.
And, here's some other stuff.
Yeah, so that was good. The Plunge miniseries from Joe Hill and Stuart Emanin I really liked. Stuart's work looked a little different because he inked himself on it, so it was cool to see like kind of what he's doing now and how his style is still evolving. And then let's see. That the book that you sold me a couple weeks ago that I just wanted to check out, but you had already pulled it for me. Solid Blood 17 was so much fun. Like it was just like it was like reading an Image comic from like 1992. You know,
Right.
printed on newsprint. It was just insane and silly and dumb, and
There was no ads in there, wasn't there?
I don't think so.
There was like a letters page and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I mean, I liked it's funny because I enjoyed that it was on newsprint, but I think I argued to you at the time that like it feels like I should only be paying $1 for this comic because it's so floppy. But that's okay. And then one other shout out I wanted to give, this is to my own book, but I'm not patting myself on the back. One of the best parts about working on Family Trees, I get to see like the pages roll in. And so because I do sometimes pencil and ink, it's just great to see stuff by Phil and Eric. And so it's like, oh, I can reverse engineer how he thought about this page or how he drew that panel or something like that. And so that was just kind of a treat for me all year, is just getting pages in my inbox and sort of like seeing how like a veteran or someone of Phil's caliber figures out these things, and then how Eric kind of puts his own spin on it. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, other than that, nothing really really jumped out at me. But all right, so talking about sales wise, you mentioned some of the smaller publishers. Did you feel like some of them, like maybe Vault or Boom, like took strides this year as far as, are you finding yourself selling more of those smaller publisher books?
A little bit. When things got back and rolling for comic shops, started in like Vault and Boom, and I'm probably forgetting some other names, the smaller press, the ones below Image, percentage wise, they said for stores that they were going to do 100% returnability. So that made things easier for us as a store, where it's like, I have people who are subscribed or who are going to jump on and try this out, or I have some selling points. And they'll give us, PDFs or whatever, but also like incentive wise, like, hey, order these, they did some stuff where it was like a better percentage off, but also 100% returnability.
Okay.
So the profit margin starting on some of the first issues was a better margin for growth, for making more money. And so there was a little bit more ease in ordering those books. So I was like, okay, I can order those. Instead of ordering 2 copies, I'll order 5.
Right.
That, might work out for us.
Yeah. So for listeners who don't understand, or I'm sure it's easily understood, but like 100% returnability, that's just so that gives you that confidence to order a handful of them rather than just one shelf copy.
Right.
Because you can get credited for them, you're not going to lose money on taking that risk.
Right. So you still pay for them, but it's just like, okay, so whatever my rate of pay was for the books, I still would take that and send it back to them to get that credit back. And so like they were offering that. Dynamite was also good about that too. And so it was kind of one of those things where like they're back in the business. They want to help us get back in business. And so for the smaller publishers, it was nice. DC did something similar too for like the first 3 months or first 2 months. And that was an ease of like, okay, we're going to have more, there could be a chance like, okay, we dropped a lot on Catwoman 80th anniversary or whatever. And if we didn't sell any, we could send it back and then we'll have a good chunk of change credit wise.
Right.
Coming to us for our order the next month. So that was nice. The same with like the oversized Green Lantern pages, stories and that kind of stuff. We had any few left over and that helped out. But having those indie titles, it was people who were exploring other things or saw, wanted to do something different. And they're like, I'm tired of the same things with Marvel and DC and the soap opera. What else is there? And then there was some good alternatives there.
Yeah. How's it now that it's been, I think we talked to you maybe like 9 months ago when the shutdown was first starting, and we were kind of talking about how it might affect your business. So once you got up and rolling again, and then DC did what DC did as far as going to their own distributor, how has that changed the way? Has it changed the way you do business, or do you just have 2 release days now? I mean, is it a drastic change in business, or?
Not for us because we're so different. You've seen our shop, like like we're the only shop in town, like you've said, and having a Tuesday release day is like it's easier for us. I think one of the things too is for people from Flagstaff, we don't like to commute as much. I realized, even though it's like 15 minutes to get from one side of Flagstaff to the other, that it's still like a pain because like they don't want to commute. So it's hard for people who want to do like, well, here's your Batman title, but if you want to come tomorrow, you can get your Star Wars title.
Right.
Like, I'll just wait and do it all one day. So it's like, okay. So there's the occasional, like if something big, like when Three Jokers came out, we had it available on Tuesday for people, but we like pushed it out on a Wednesday. So we had it and people came to the door and said, hey, can I get the Three Jokers? Do you have like, here's the covers. We'd still sell it, but we wouldn't like so much put advertisement or plug it too much, because if people are coming for it, they know they're going to come for it. So I'm busy on Tuesdays trying to get my Marvel and IDW and Dark Horse stuff received and processed on the shelf. So, but we will have, like this week with the delays, we had a Tuesday release day of all the DC books, and then today for Thursday we had all the new issues because we got all our books today. So it worked out okay. But most people, they're used to Wednesdays.
Right.
They're gonna come on Wednesdays. So
Yeah, I mean, as far as I remember, I mean, when I was like a kid, I never knew what new comic release day. I never knew when comics came out. I just went to the store like once a week. But since I've been consciously buying comics and going in, it's always been a Wednesday to me. So, but I guess I'm the same way. Like from my place to your shop is like a less than a 5-minute drive, or about a 5-minute drive. But there's no way I'm going to go there on Tuesday and then again on Wednesday. Like that just seems silly.
right.
Like plus they're like DC books. So I doubt you're going to be like, oh, I sold out of that Batman book you wanted, in one day. So it's not something I ever really think about. It just seems to me like it's just more, it's just like added steps and maybe more paperwork on your end as the retailer. But
It's a little bit, but it's more of kind of like, I need to know, I have an FOC due on Sunday and I have a FOC due on Monday. So I need to make sure my final order cutoff is up and running on Sunday. Because on Friday, I'll check everything and make sure everything's right. And then like if I second guess myself, I'll go in Sunday from home and look at my FOC and kind of bump the numbers up. But Monday, used to be my go-to day. But now it's like I kind of do like a Friday for DC and then a light one for everything else. And then Monday I do a final order again for all Marvel and other titles.
right. All right. So sales wise, what was the big big shit last year? What were the big comics?
So I kind of pulled some of our data from we just switched the system over to a new system in September, Comic Hub. It's the same system as like Samurai Comics and a lot of shops in California, and it's a really cool intuitive program for people, for box holders and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of like pull some of our data, but also look at the titles. And it worked out because like the last from like, God, May to September, there was a few, some stuff happening, but nothing crazy. But for overall as a store, we were like, we are heavily a top DC store as DC Comics. Because the biggest thing for us was Batman 3 Jokers, because we went really big on those orders and got those special. We had the cover A, cover B, and then we had the 3 special designated special variants for stores. So we went those, and so that was kind of our over the summer. Look at the numbers over the summer, and then also for the rest of the year, because we'll still sell those in the shop. People come in and be like, oh, I need to get this one. I didn't get this cover because my shop didn't, whatever. Or people will pick it up who are traveling. But Batman 3 Jokers was like our biggest seller of the store. The Jeff Johns and Jason Fabak comic, and that was our biggest seller. And then after that, it was like death metal with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo.
Yeah, I I have a note here to say ask follow-up questions because I never do that. So I guess I didn't read either of those books, so I don't really know what any of them are about. I know that death metal is like an alternate universe kind of, or a different Earth kind of thing, but it's like it's shocking to me. And don't get me wrong, Greg Capullo is a top all-time artist guy, you know, but it just seems so bizarre to me. Like I don't need to see like 80s hairband versions of
Right.
these characters. And that's, I mean, obviously the story could be great, but I can't get past like all the chains and all the spikes and all like the
Well, if you think about, like we talked about it earlier with the X-Men, X of Swords, kind of fun excitement of that, you had that with your DC, you know, your death metal.
okay.
And I'm not going to try, you know, and sway your opinion to, you know, you should pick these up, but like they're just fun, but also like crazy, you know, antics and that kind of stuff happen in metal. And it's just one of those things where it's like this most recent issue that came out this week. Yeah, they just came out this week. Number 7, the last few pages paid off of what you've been following for metal. If you've been reading metal, it's just, you got the payoff. You got your big, here is your conclusion. And I was like, that is awesome. That's such a good, you know, storytelling, but also great art. And I think Capullo for this story is like some of the greatest art in the long, you know, and so in a while. And Batman 3 Jokers, which was only 3 issues, but also Black Label and, you know, special kind of square bound, a little bit oversized book, was probably one of the best Batman stories in the last 5 years.
Okay.
You know, kind of like, not to take away from Tom King's ongoing stories that he had in Batman, but I think, you know, 3 Jokers is probably one of the best, you know, Batman, however you want to in 5 years, the last 5 years.
Now, was 3 Jokers kind of self-contained, or is it supposed to be in continuity?
It's ambiguous.
Okay. Do you think that helps, like those kind of events where you don't have to have like read the previous 4 issues of like Detective Comics to having them self-contained stories released like this probably benefits because because you don't need to know the 80-year history of Superman to read about Superman in death metal.
Right. And this is kind of like, I mean, it's one of the things where it's like, if the writer and the artist have a following, then it's easy to sell. But it's also one of the things where it's like, if you get excited, like, oh yeah, this is a Joker, you know, Joker's anniversary, 80 years, whatever, you know, last year, because everything was Joker last year. And here's 3 Joker story. And it's like, and if you get a chance to read it, you can kind of pick out your Jokers, because there is 3 Jokers, but you can kind of feel like, oh, that's the one. To me, feels like, you know, like there's a feeling you have when you read it, like representation of Jokers, like, oh, that's the one that felt like the one that killed, you know, Jason Todd.
Okay.
Or that one felt like the one that was in the crazy zany antics of the 60s and that kind of stuff. So, you know, the comedian and the you know, not, you know, psychopath and stuff. So those for us as a store were the top ones. And then follow behind that was like Batman Joker War, which was like, it's a fun story, but it was just like, I think it did so well for us selling wise because it was every 2 weeks. Those twice a month shipments, which is like, there's so much. And it was like one of the things where it's like every other week was a Batman book.
Right.
And so that was kind of our bigger numbers, because I think it was more quantity over quality, but there was still a story. I felt like the Joker War could have been longer. And I feel like it could have been like, instead of 5 issues, the whole Joker War situation, not counting the tie-ins and the punchline specials and that kind of stuff, it could have been like a you know, like a no man's land kind of thing, where it's like, this goes on for like a year, or it can go on for like quite a while, where it could be more story and development, but also like, all right, here's this, you know, here's this next issue, but like how we are, where it's more, again, quantity over quality. So here's, just keep pushing more Joker War for, like we have 5 issues, but we're going to get those issues in 2 months, and then we'll be on to a new Batman story.
Right. Like there's never a shortage of special Batman projects coming out.
Right.
What about what were big sellers as far as like Marvel goes?
So the X-Men run, Exoswords, and the Exoswords event was Stasis and Destruction. I think those were ones. Those were the RB Silva. I believe those were the ones. And X-Men 13 to 14 what kind of led into the Exoswords event were kind of our big ones. And then surprisingly, we had a little bit of a push because we finished last year Spider-Man from J.J. Abrams and
Sarah Pacelli.
Sarah Pacelli and the Abrams father and son storytelling that finished. And I think it was one of those things where the hiatus really hurt it, because it was like we were supposed to get issue 4, I think early last year, and then it got delayed, and then COVID hit. So, but that one, there was enough people who were like, oh, wait, that still came out? And so they jumped on it because they wanted to make sure they got those, finish the story arc. Because it was like, here's issue 1, 2, and 3. All right, wait a year. A year later, here's 4 and 5. So it was kind of one of those things where like, oh, I forgot what happened.
Right.
And those were kind of the ones that did well. I think also Star Wars Darth Vader, it sold well. And I looked at my data and I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, oh, it has the face of the guy, has Vader on the cover. And I don't know I'm sorry. I don't know what issue number it was, but it was like Star Wars Darth Vader. And then it was a couple different numbers of the Star Wars Darth Vader that did well for us. And then for us too, is being up in Northern Arizona, Marvel's in Voices, the Indigenous number 1.
Right.
And that did really well for us.
Oh, that's good.
And that was one of those things where like I bought some from my old shop, Ash Avenue in Tempe. I asked them Diamond wasn't fast enough to get my restocks, so I bought some from them and got them up within a couple days.
Okay. Yeah. Did you feel like did you see new customers coming in because of that?
Yes. And that was really cool because it was like they're like, I'm looking for this, like kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm looking for a Marvel voice, like Marvel, here you go. And like kind of like one of the things where like, here's various covers, and they're like, I'll take all of them. And I'm like, okay. Because like when it came out, I had somebody come in and buy like 2 every cover, and one for them, and then one to give to their family members as gifts for Christmas. And I was like, that was like right on. And so like, I'm sure, and kind of like talking to my regulars that come in, I'm like, hey, here's this, Marvel Indigenous Voices, like, oh, sweet. And I'm like, this is all creators. And like, and at the end of the issue, they mentioned a mini series coming out in February for it too. Okay. So there's going to be a spinoff out of it for a mini series, which is really kind of exciting too, because that's like awesome. It's really cool to have like, local people excited, and also new customers that are like, oh, here's a comic book that speaks to me. And I'm like, yes, we can help you with that for sure.
It's great. And I like the initiative that it brought in new readers and kind of did what it was supposed to do, celebrate and also bring in new readers. Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a quick break to do my beer thing, because I want to keep drinking, but I can't pull the bottles out without doing the finale thing here. So let's see. The last couple of weeks have been shocking to me personally. So let's find out. My big loser was C, and C was Bush. It almost tasted like someone crumpled up like a medicine, like I got a roofie in it or something. It had like a pharmaceutical aftertaste. So that's out the window. The other one that's not advancing is D, which is the Dos Equis, which, I can drink a Dos Equis, but like if I'm going out to eat, I'm taking a Pacifico or a Tecate. So I'm not sad to see either one of those go. So that's a little surprising. B, which is moving on, is Pabst PBR. I've drank plenty of this over the last decade or so. So no surprise there. And then the big winner of the day, Miller High Life. I can't believe I can't believe this is the big winner of the day. But I've noticed throughout this whole ridiculous challenge is whatever's easiest to drink is always getting first place, because I'm not really thinking about the taste and flavor and any aspect of it. It's just it's like the least offensive to drink. Whatever tastes most like water usually advances.
So High Life is easier to drink than PBR for you.
Apparently.
Wow.
But it was also like nothing. Like if I tasted nothing, then it's probably going to the top of the list. So that's okay. So High Life and Pabst move on. Now I can drink like normal for the rest of the show.
Are you going to have a loser's bracket for yourself to kind of like...
No. Why would I do that to myself? I should punish Scott for missing so many episodes. He should have to drink a tall boy, whatever is the overall loser. Okay, so what is, just real quick, and then we'll get into 2021. Do you have an idea of what your biggest indie seller was? That's not like Walking Dead. I'm talking about like a...
So yeah, I kind of wrote some stuff down. I mean, Something to Killing Children was kind of like a big... these are all titles that we did, double digits on.
Okay.
And so Something to Killing Children, which kind of have a fan following afterwards, because they did a volume 1, which was like nearly impossible to get in stock through Diamond during the shutdown. And I was able to get some through Simon & Schuster and restock on that. And then people were like, here, check out this, Somebody's Killing Children. And then volume 2 came out in September or October. And people just jumped on that one and then kind of did like the whole old saga approach. Like, here's the 2 traits. All right, here's the next issue in a single issue form.
Right.
So, and that one did really well. I guess because of hype, I don't know if this really counts, but the IDW TMNT Last Ronin story.
Yes.
Yeah, that was mostly because issues were going for $20 a piece, but we sold out day of. So
yeah, those are expensive. Aren't those oversized issues too? Those are like $7 issues or something.
They're like golden size too.
Oh, okay.
They don't fit in normal bag and boards either. And then kind of like honorable mention for indie Image stuff was Spawn, because Spawn had
Spawn 300 or whatever, right?
Well, no, 310. 300 was 2 years ago, man.
Jesus.
Right? Yeah. So like I think part of the Spawn thing was they had the it looked like, to me, it was Todd McFarlane's take on Billy Jack, like the gunslinger. But I'm like, that looks like Billy Jack. But
right,
that's his those kind of like those new characters. His Chadwick Boseman tribute cover too that sold out. And then for us, Department of Truth from
Image.
Those were both kind of like our honorable mention in the indie books, because those did really well. And I think Jenny Frisian did a variant cover for number 1, and we sold out of that one. That was good.
Cool. Yeah. Whenever I see the Spawn stuff, and I'm not gonna, Spawn's fine. I have like the first like 30 issues of Spawn or whatever. But I did think it looked a little silly. The hat, like Spawn with a hat on, kind of looks silly. But who am I to? I haven't put out 300 plus issues of a comic.
It's like he introduced like a Kung Fu Spawn and like various other, like, here's the Spawn crew. And it's like, all right.
Well, I mean, that's what you can do with a character like that, is you can have, 100 versions of them from 100 different timelines and throughout history. And yeah. Kung Fu Spawn. All right. What are you moving into the new year? What's kind of got you excited, or what okay. So what personally are you excited about? And then we'll get into the business, but like, what do you think is going to be cool? I don't know what comics you read or what I don't even know what your favorite comic or character is. So,
well, I mean, it's hard to tell what, like, I get solicitations for 2 months in advance, and then like I forget what's coming out next week. So it's like the constant like push of information to me. And for me, like I'm a Marvel fan, And I'm looking at my numbers. I was like a little bit surprised going through our data and like seeing like Spider-Man wasn't in there. And so like I remember because we had like 10 people, and now we have 6 people for Spider-Man kind of stuff, like lower numbers of Spider-Man. People are kind of like dropping off, and I'm like, oh man, but it's so good right now. And there's some cool stuff there. And Daredevil has been pretty awesome. Chip Zdarsky doing some stuff with Daredevil. It's one thing where it's like I can see what sells for us as a store, than like seeing what I like myself and being like I need to like step back and not go crazy. Like, oh my God, you guys gotta, like my excitement to like, understand this is happening in this issue, Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn, they're, like this kind of stuff where I'm like, now you're just sounding like a nerd. Like, I just want to read about Spider-Man and shooting webs and stuff. I'm like, okay. So
Right.
I try to like keep it back because I don't want to like, it's one thing where I try to sell things and like I'd rather have somebody see something and read it and enjoy the art and enjoy the story versus like here's my personal opinion about why this is so good, but like here's this thing, let's find what you like. Don't
Right.
like because what I say. And kind of like going forward, like I want to see what goes on. It's weird because this world we live in right now sucks because like there's no cons, and so that's kind of usually when you get teasers and that kind of stuff because like it's January, and then in a few months would be like Emerald City,
Right.
or other, some WonderCon and some other stuff, but I don't know too much that's on the horizon. Through DC Comics sends me, they send us advanced reader PDFs and some kind of solicitation stuff that way. And that's been kind of cool. So for the next 2 months, they're on hold for January and February for Future State.
Right.
And I've been kind of reading, I got to read a good portion of those comics, and that's kind of cool to be able to read a full issue of what's happening in their new vision for
Right.
DC Comics, and kind of seeing the stuff there. Like there's characters I don't care too much about, but there's other stuff like Bendis is on Justice League, and it's like, guys, 3 years ago, this is what we thought he'd be doing because he wrote Avengers and he was good on Avengers. It just makes sense that Bendis would be on a team book because that's what he does. He's like, oh, Legion of Superheroes. Like, cool. I don't know anything about Legion.
Right.
But it's like Bendis is going to be writing Justice League with Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, and Black Canary as like part of the leadership crew. And I'm like, that's kind of cool because Bendis was my Avengers entry point because I got Avengers disassembled. Well, Kurt Busiek and George Perez was my first, but then I got older, and then I actually got more money, so I was able to actually buy, could afford buying comic books,
Right.
not just collective volumes as a kid. But that was like the one his Avengers run and his Mighty Avengers and New Avengers and that kind of stuff. That's what I'm, it's like this is what we've been waiting for with Bendis, kind of in a way, to see his team book.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited. I mentioned it, I think maybe last week or something. I talked a little bit about like I'm kind of excited for some of Future State. Like I like that. I always talk about how I'm a fan of legacy characters, so I like that kind of idea. I don't understand why it's not done more. But yeah, I mean, if I like the artist, like you, or I got the next Batman earlier this week. God, this week has felt like a month. That was like 2 days ago. I picked up the next Batman. Wait, no, it was yesterday. It was yesterday.
Wait, okay.
I picked up the next Batman. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I really enjoyed 2 of the 3 stories. So, and yeah, it was kind of a fun new take. Nothing like genre changing or mind bending or anything. Just good comics, I guess. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Dan Mora's Batman issues that are coming out. So I just think it's kind of a neat thing. I like it when they do. I'd rather a publisher do something like that than do a 22-part crossover across your line of mutant books. To be honest, because I can pick and choose these. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Right. So I think that's cool. I think it's a good thing that DC's doing. Other than that, I don't really. I tried to like Google like what are the big comic announcements, but I feel like maybe it's because there are no cons, and normally they would save them up for conventions and give you like a big info dump.
Right.
I don't really know what's like. I don't really know what to look forward to or what's exciting. So I guess I'll just keep doing what I always do and just follow my favorite artists and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, is there anything again, like maybe as a retailer that like, they're already teasing like another X event about the Hellfire Club, and I'm sure the ugly ass new Spider-Man costume, that's like an event thing. Like,
Yeah.
does any of that get you hyped up, or is it like?
I mean, not so much.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you separate yourself as like a fan, maybe saying like this isn't for me as a fan, but it might be good for the store,
Right.
because other people like it.
Because there's things where it's like with like a new Wonder Woman from Future State was like, here's a new Wonder Woman. But then I was like, people, like I had a customer today talk to him. I'm like, oh, there's a new Wonder Woman. And he's like, but what about Diana? I'm like, she's back in Immortal Wonder Woman. So she's still there. You still have your, a character Immortal. He's like, oh, what's that? I'm like, it's older Wonder Woman, but she's older. She's got gray hair. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to get both. Like, sweet. That kind of stuff where it's like, there's still those characters that and enjoy and want to see what happens. I mean, spoiler for if you haven't read Metal, sorry, but Justice Society is back. And
I didn't even know they went anywhere.
Well, they've been gone for like almost, I mean, not counting Earth 2, New 52, those versions, they've been gone for like probably close to 10 years or a little bit, like maybe 9 years.
Okay.
So Justice Society, like the first superheroes.
No, I know who they are.
They're the greatest generation.
Sure. The best of us.
So they're coming back in some form, I think in some regards it's kind of nice to have, like, we only solicit, the only things we get news wise for comic stuff is solicitations, or like little previews like that, versus like con stuff, which like, hey, here's the thing, and then like they're 3 months ahead versus like now we're like 2 months ahead.
Right.
So it's like, it's kind of nice to have a slow release of new things coming out. And it's Superman with a new creative team and that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that and see where they go. Cause especially like with Bendis, everyone knew who Superman was, in DC Comics. So they know who Clark Kent and Superman. So it'll be interesting to see where they go come March when everything goes back to regular titles and kind of see where that goes. And people who want to see what's going on, Joker's getting his own series, which is not sure about that, how that's going to go.
Well, but didn't you say 3 Jokers was your biggest seller last year?
Right. But
right.
have a Joker on his own ongoing series.
Oh, I'm sure every issue will have a supporting Bat character in it.
Right. The way it was sounded like it might be a Commissioner Gordon story. So like kind of told from his tale versus like, I want to get the Joker because this is insane, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think, what do you think the shutdown this year? First of all, how long were you shut down to where you weren't even, cause you kind of phased back in, but how long was the store actually shut down for you this in 2020?
Well, I mean, I still came to work partially a couple days, but we didn't let people in the store. But I worked about 2. I mean, it was nice and bad, nice in some regards, but also bad in others. But we were gone, like things were done and not happening for about a month. So right. April was kind of like the month that nothing happened in, but that's when we found out about DC Comics and Lunar distribution. And they started they're like, we're going to put out new books, but we're going to put out these, 4 or 5 titles. And one of them was the Joe Hill comics or the Sandman Universe comics. And then a few like minor other issues. So it was like, here, you're not getting your Batman, you're not getting your Superman, you're not getting your Wonder Woman, but you're getting some smaller titles. And then they're like, okay, we're going to start doing Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, bigger name titles,
Right.
to bring out new content, to do new things. So that was nice. And then that it was nice to have that sense of a break and not worry about trying to make the bottom line, but also like there's no deliveries. I'm not getting any packages. I'm not getting any, there's nothing new coming in. I'm just like, all right, I'll just take a break and kind of like reset and figure things out and come back to this, when things are ready.
Did that sort of adjustment and soft reopening and all that, did you learn anything from that did you do business differently once you reopened? Did you push more like online stuff, or how did you what did you learn coming out of those like 3-4 months?
So I learned about so I guess go back February of 2020, I went to the comics retailer Comics Pro event in Portland and met other store owners. I hung out with Mike from Samurai, hung out with a few other shop owners, and learned about a lot of stuff and a lot of tools from there. And then when I got back in February after that flight, I hit the ground running of like all the things I learned. I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to implement this. I'm going to start a paperwork and that kind of stuff. And then in March, I had got all my accounts set up through different publishers. So for the longest time, I mostly did work with Diamond. But when Diamond shut down, I had 3 publishers to pick from that I can get Scholastic books for Bone. I can get Simon & Schuster for Dark Horse and manga. And I got Penguin Random House so I can get DC books from. Graphic novels, not single issues, but right. I can bring in a wealth of knowledge and wealth of books from. I don't have to rely on Diamond to keep my store afloat. I don't have to be sufficient to have one distribution. I can have several. And so that's what I came out with was like, okay, here I can do this. And that's when I kind of like part of the things, I was happy to have you on before. We had that book club because that was like, for me, when the shutdown happened, I'm like, I miss talking to people and having a conversation with my regulars and having a conversation with people about comics because like there's no new comic books. Let me try and do a Zoom book club. And so that been working out with you, having you as a guest for Family Tree, but also like we have a group once a month, a constant steady, we'll have 5 or 6 copies of a book that sells through for people that are coming, want to, like what book are you, introducing? What are you going to do? And that's been great. Kind of like in this crazy world of being like, hey, things suck, but let's talk about comics.
Yeah. And it's a smart way I'm not saying you're doing it because it's a fun thing to do, but it's also a good sales tool. Like if you have it by the register, you're like, hey, this is what we're doing for Zoom book club this month. If you're interested, because everyone wants to be part. I'm sure a lot of your regulars want to talk comics. Like, because even now it's limited, it's limited to people in the store. So it's almost like when I stopped in yesterday, I felt like, oh, I need to hurry up and like get my transaction done because there's a guy waiting to come in the store and I don't want to be a dick.
Right. So
a lot of these people, I'm sure a lot of your regulars before the pandemic would spend a lot longer than 5 or 10 minutes in the shop, so they're missing a social aspect they used to have. And for a lot of comic book fans, that's probably a big part of their social life is talking comics or talking geeky shit and stuff like that. So that's a good idea.
And so that's something, coming out from the shutdown was that, and then trying to, like gauge people's interests, or like we'll have people that are like, hey, I need to get this, not just like, I'm interested in this. It's like, here, they want to support us and they don't know what they want. They don't know how to support us. And that's kind of where things have come in through, families. I have a 3-year-old and they're like, do you have books for us? Or do you have board games for us? And I'm like, I don't have anything for a 3-year-old. I don't have anything for a 5-year-old. I don't have anything for a 6-year-old. And so that's where I'm like, I have a blind spot that I didn't know I had. And now I've been able to kind of like revitalize our all ages section, revitalize our kid section, and have, kid games, kid comics, and that kind of stuff there that we didn't normally have for an age group that I was unaware of. So that's been, very helpful for us.
All right. So I guess I don't have any other questions. Do you have any other topics or any other notes? Anything you want to educate me on?
You should read Deceased Dead Planet.
Oh, that's the Wonder Woman book?
No, Deceased. No, that's Deader.
Deceased is the zombie book.
Yeah.
I do like that artist though, Trevor Hairsign.
Yeah. That was like one that kind of like, I forgot to mention that one because that was one that was like Tom Taylor, who's going to take over Nightwing. He gets it. Like, I feel like he's one of those guys that's like going to be up and coming, that he's Australian, and his storytelling for doing, I didn't read Injustice. I played the video game. I didn't read the books, but he gets the characters, but he gets to play with the toys and let them die and be like, all right, we're going to move on. And this is what happens.
Yeah. But again, I think that's the way comics should be. Is that's another like self-contained sort of universe story. It doesn't tie into anything else.
Right.
And again, it's accessible that way. Like, I forget who put this idea out there, or at least where I read it. It might've been like Becky Cloonan on Twitter or something like that, saying like, we all like our floppies because we like going in every month. But what if instead of a 20-page floppy, every 3 months you got like a 50 or 60-page like graphic novella, and they're all self-contained. So, well, I'm going to contradict myself because I do believe more artists should be on longer runs if you're going to do floppies.
Right.
But if you're not going to do floppies, then just get someone like Becky Cloonan who has a great Batman idea and just let her do it, whether it's 6 issues or 8 issues. And it doesn't have to be beholden to anything. It can just be its own story. Like,
yeah,
I don't think in 2021 we need Detective Comics number 1056.
Right.
When we could just have Batman, a Batman story that runs over 6 issues and is done.
Well, I think that they also announced this year they're going back to monthly for most titles.
What were they before? Twice a month?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's tough on an industry where most of the stores shut down for a good part of the year. Yeah.
I think, well, with the with what's going on right now, like Future State is 100% returnable too. So that's been nice. And kind of having that like cushion where it's like, I'm looking at my wall and I'm like, oh, I should have ordered more Swamp Thing. Like I have a couple more Swamp Things left for Future State, whereas like I didn't know who was going to get into it. Like, oh, do Swamp Thing. Like, really? Like that kind of surprised me, surprising to me. And, other titles where I knew like, okay, I'm glad I did the number on that one for Wonder Woman. I'm glad I did that number for Superman. And like, obviously the $8.99 price point on Batman is kind of rough for some people. So I didn't need to order that many. So.
Yeah, let's hope every issue's not that much. I'm sure it will be though. All right. Well, cool. Yeah, I hope this year, I mean, it's funny to think about like things returning to normal because things are worse now than they were in April and May. Like it's just weird. Like everyone's just so tired of everything shutting down. But
well, yeah. Plus Arizona is like we're number 1.
Yeah, globally, like we're the best in the world.
Take that, Brazil. What's up?
Yeah, motherfuckers. Yeah, it's nuts because, and I've talked about this plenty of times on the show. I guess some people would say I'm part of the problem. Like I do go out and have a drink or whatever, but I'm very careful of like what establishments because I'm torn between, first of all, I like to go out.
Yeah.
But also secondly, like if a business is going to be open, it's a small business. I want to support it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're also like, is it fair to that bartender? Like, is that bartender happy that I'm there? Or is that bartender pissed that they have to be there?
Right.
So it's just, it's torn, but I don't know what else to do except maybe the government could pay people to stay home. What I'm saying is I hope 2021, at least by halfway through the year, things get back on track.
Yeah.
You're not going to be if unfortunately you're missing out on being wined and dined by Robert Kirkman again this year. That's a bummer.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
those are like those San Diego Comic Con like breakfast or dinners. He has, yeah, it's like chicken and waffles, and like an open beer bar. I just,
Yeah.
oh man, and then it's like here's all the goodies, and I'm like, thank you, Robert Kirkman.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but
It shouldn't. It shouldn't happen anytime soon.
it shouldn't happen anytime soon.
Yeah, which
Um,
is like I understand that totally because it's like it's one thing where it's like all right, cool, but it also look at the bigger picture, not just like what you. I mean, it's one thing to feel like oh I'm missing out, but it's also like we're all missing out.
right.
So we're all in the same boat. So don't worry about stressing.
Yeah. If you're super missing out, join the Cab Comics Zoom book club. Are you still doing a lot of before? I guess I was going to promote your eBay store. Are you still doing a lot of online sales, or is that slowed down a little bit?
Yeah, slow down a little bit. eBay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess in some regards, it's like it's a good thing, but also a bad thing. Like you've seen, I've seen our store. We have tournament tables and stuff set up for gaming, and so that's kind of taken a hit. So that's taken my interest in like what I would normally order, X amount of dollars for said card game. I don't do that anymore. I cut back on those orders because I'm not going to have a tournament in my store.
Right.
I'm not going to have people coming in playing. I'm not going to have, a tournament, and we limit the people in the store, one group of one person at a time. And that's kind of changed my perspective and been able to like re-evaluate and go towards more comic stuff and more things like that I have more of a passion for.
Right.
Not to say like card games and board games are not my passion, but they're not the one thing. When I first opened, it's not called Cab Games, it's called Cab Comics. And so that's been been fun to kind of like re-energize my excitement,
Right.
re-energize like, guys, have you seen these epic collections from Marvel Comics? There's like, these, giant, like here's Maximum Carnage all in one book. And it'll blow like a 40-year-old's mind, like, oh my God, I have all those issues. Like it's right here, every issue.
Right. Yeah. Like if money wasn't an option, like I would just, even though I have all the floppies, my collection isn't all together. Like I'll pull comics out to read them and not put them back so that I don't keep them in order the way I should. So it's like, oh, if I want to read like Next Wave, I could go dig out 12 floppies out of maybe 16 different boxes, and that would take all day.
Right.
Yeah. Just go to Cab Comics and buy the trade. Save yourself the effort. If people that are listening to this don't have a local comic shop that they go to, what's your website, or where would you direct them if they wanted to order something?
So we're cabcomicsaz.com. And so we also, and through there you can sign up a Comic Hub account, which is like, I've been hesitant. That's what we got out of this through pandemic, is I got a new point of sale system set up through Comic Hub. And that's been a great thing for us because we'll have people in out of Tuba City or Williams or Winslow get books or subscribe to books that I wouldn't normally have them. And so it gives a communication between comic store owner and box holder to where they can pick out books, but also see like, here's all the new books that are going to come out next week. And so like, oh, I want to check that out. Get single issues or subscribe to series that they hear about through their artists or their favorite writers. So
Right.
It's kind of helped us anticipate people's needs without trying to like, hey, are you interested in this? I don't have to do like that whole hand sale. It does it for me. So I don't have to like stress and work so hard for that.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for being on, Cory. Are you excited about comics?
Yeah.
Did the struggle of pandemic you mentioned it made you focus more on comics?
Right. Because it was like, that's the form of media.
Right.
For the longest time, that was the only thing new coming out.
Right.
Because they weren't doing.
But maybe it also, I'm sorry, I was thinking like, did it also like, was maybe doing it for 9 years getting kind of repetitive, and now it's like a new challenge and now you're reinvigorated? or is it just like we got to survive 2020? Like, we got to survive this kind of shit.
I mean, there's some revigoration coming out of it, but there's also like more of a whole learning new things that I don't know about, like finding the books for kids, getting a HarperCollins account or talking to them or talking to, Penguin Random House about books for my store, or like Dog Man. Like that's a huge like thing for kids, having elementary kids like, oh, I don't read comic books, but I'll read Dog Man. I'm like, it's still a comic book form,
Right.
It's still, but it's okay. I'm not going to fight you, but we have Dog Man now, or we have a good selection of Bone, kind of these things where it's like, here's stuff that, introduces you to these books. And then there we have, I can't say his name, but Chris starts with a G. He does he works with Brad Meltzer on the like Abraham Lincoln's and I Am George Washington.
Gia Russo.
Yeah. We got a good chunk of those in, which I didn't have any idea how I could get those, and I did. And now we have a section of like here, especially stuff where it's like in the political age we live in, where it's like here is stuff to help educate your kids, but also tell a story and also have fun
right
through comics. So that's been fun for me, kind of like finding things that way.
Yeah, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Well, I know you got to get to bed. I should probably get to bed. Thanks for being on. Thanks for hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, dude. Talk to you later.
No problem, man. Take it easy.
Yeah. All right.
We'll see it.